r/NoSleep. Posted by u/horror_writer_1717. I went on vacation in the middle of nowhere. What I found will haunt me for the rest of my life. I rented a beautiful home in the foothills of West Virginia. I needed some time away from the hustle and bustle. This place was amazing. It was like someone had plopped a beach house down in the middle of the woods. I didn't need a place this big for myself, but I couldn't pass up the amazing price for a weekly rental. When I asked the woman why this beautiful home was so cheap, she smiled nervously and said, "Just that time of year." I didn't question her any further for fear she would realize her mistake and up the price. The day I arrived was mostly sunny with a few clouds lazily drifting by. Just enough to give some ambience to the scenery. It was on a wildlife preserve, so animals lingered in the field without a care in the world. I saw deer and turkey walk right up to my car as I drove down the dirt road towards my destination. When I pulled in, I thought I had arrived in heaven. There was a lake right next to the house with fields and woods all around. A fire pit was set up beside the lake with a ring of wooden chairs encircling it. As I parked my car and got my suitcase, a deer walked right up to me and sniffed me. I held out my hand and I assumed it was a she because it had no antlers, regarded me for a moment before sticking her nose in my palm and taking a deep breath. She eyed me once more, then slowly walked off as if she had said hello to a neighbor and was off on her way. I typed in the security code and went inside. The pictures didn't do this house justice. My jaw dropped and I dragged it around looking at all the rooms. There was a full game room with a pool table, card table, foosball, air hockey, giant TV, you name it. The place had a hot tub, and a half-dozen decks surrounding it. You could step out and see in any direction from a bird's eye view. There were rocking chairs all around, which I fully intended to take advantage of. The entire place was set up for comfort and ease. I put my suitcase in the master bedroom, then brought the rest of my supplies in, which consisted of a lot of food. I had no idea how far the stores were from the house, and I didn't want to waste hours of my day looking for a grocery store when I could be relaxing. Once I had put my food away, I looked around for the Wi-Fi password. It was posted on a bulletin board in the kitchen, along with some other instructions. "This is our home, please take care of it as you would your own. The dishes and silverware are here for your use, please make sure they don't accidentally visit your house." I chuckled at these little reminders. Please don't flush anything but toilet paper. Then I paused as I read an unusual one. When you retire for the evening, make sure you close and lock all windows, doors, blinds, and curtains. Do not open them or go out on the deck for any reason until sunup. If you wish to stargaze, do so only on Wednesday night. This struck me as rather odd. I had no intention of doing any of this, of course. Once I go to bed, I'm out until morning. I settled in and made myself some supper. I took it outside and sat in a rocking chair that overlooked the lake. I watched the sunset mirroring itself in the water before disappearing. Shortly after, the clouds lit up a brilliant red at twilight. I never wanted to leave this place. Once the post-disc insects came in, I decided to adjourn back inside and read a book. I perused their selection, which ranged all over. From the standard paperbacks of John Grisham and Lee Child to cookbooks to history books. There were also a few more esoteric choices, such as Strange Creatures of the Wilderness and Haunted West Virginia. I decided on a Clive Cussler book and took it with me to bed. A few chapters in, I felt sleep tugging at my eyelids, so I laid the book aside and snuggled in. It seemed like 10 seconds later the morning sun was peeking in through a sliver in the blinds, telling me it was time to get up. I made some coffee and a bagel, then went back out to greet my lake. It had been raining and that fresh smell lingered in the air. The feeling of renewal surrounded me. I wanted to stay here for the rest of my life. I milled around the house that day, taking some incredible wildlife pictures. I read some more of my book and pretty much enjoyed relaxing. When I went to bed that evening, I made sure the doors were locked and the blinds closed, as instructed. The next day went pretty much the same. I decided to do some stargazing that evening, but it was overcast and the stars only peeked out here and there. I went to bed disappointed for the first time this week. The following night I went to bed early with the intention of getting up in the middle of the night and looking for the missing stars from the night before. At midnight the alarm on my phone woke me. I peeked out through the curtain and saw a sky full of stars with nary a cloud in sight. Excited, I grabbed my camera and tripod, then headed out onto the deck. The air was crisp but not cold. I got my camera set up on the tripod and started taking pictures of the stars. As the camera did its thing, my eyes drifted toward the lake. It was a moonless night and there was little light, but as my eyes adjusted I swore I saw someone sitting in one of the chairs near the lake. As I looked more intently, I saw more than one somebody. It appeared that each chair was occupied. I wondered if some local kids were borrowing my fire ring for a party, not realizing I had rented the place for the week. My eye rose as I began to mentally compose the email I would send to the owner informing her of the intrusion when my mind froze. None of them were wearing clothes. I know when I see a naked person. Admittedly, that hasn't been nearly as often as I'd like lately, but I know the look. These people didn't look like that. They were tall, dark, and looked like every one of them needed a full body shave. Then it hit me. They weren't human. My curiosity and fear waged a mighty battle, but in the end, curiosity won. I slowly adjusted my camera from aiming at the sky to aiming at the chairs surrounding the fire pit. I had just snapped the first picture when one of the creatures noticed me. It growled something to the rest and they all turned and stared at me. I've never felt such a shard of pure terror penetrate my mind as I did at that moment. I grabbed my camera and darted inside. Once there, I made sure to lock the door. It wasn't 10 seconds until the assault began. The pounding on the doors and windows was nothing in comparison to the guttural growling and screaming. I was terrified beyond rational thought. I ran downstairs searching desperately for some place to hide. The pounding seemed to follow me as if they had surrounded the house. I searched for a room to hide in that didn't have windows. In desperation, I threw myself into a closet and locked the door. There was no light, so I shone my phone around the cramped closet and sat on a box of cleaning chemicals. My breathing came in ragged gasps as panic and physical exertion conspired to send me into unconsciousness. The pounding seemed farther away. I was able to calm myself enough to slow my breathing. I looked at the camera still mounted to the tripod. I turned on the camera and looked at the picture. It was blurry. My settings were still for taking pictures of stars. Any movement would blur the image. So much for proof. The pounding had ceased. I listened with hopeful ears to see if my siege of terror was over. That's when I heard the terrible sound. It wasn't a scream or pounding, or anything like that. It was the creak of a floorboard. I stopped breathing and listened. It must have been my imagination. Then I heard the heavy breathing. I crept up to the door and listened. It was right outside the door. I started shaking. After 10 minutes the creature hadn't ripped the door open and devoured me. I sat back down on the box and tried to relax. If I was going to die, then I was. There was nothing I could do with the creature right outside my door that was obviously hunting me. I relaxed and slowed my breathing. My adrenaline finally wore off and I crashed. I leaned my head against a shelf and waited for my inevitable death. I woke sometime later. I slowly sat up and stretched my neck to work out the kinks. I looked at my phone. It said 3:33 a.m. It also said, low battery. I had run out of options. I stuck my phone in my pocket, picked up my camera with the tripod still attached, and reached for the door. I turned the knob as quietly as possible and inched open the door. I stifled a gasp when I saw what looked like a giant bear rug curled up in a ball on the floor. Its breathing was loud and steady. I pushed the door open as far as I could and tried to squeeze through. The door refused to open enough for me to fit. I looked down and saw the door was pressed against the creature's foot. There was nothing for it. I had to move the foot or stay in my closet prison. I pushed with all my might. The door opened another inch. I braced my back against the door frame and pushed again. The foot moved enough for me to escape. Then the creature stirred in its sleep. I froze halfway out the door. The creature began to move. It stirred and began moving its gargantuan arms, then its legs. Suddenly it kicked the door, throwing me back into the closet and slamming the door. I landed on my back and the wind was knocked out of me. I lay there, trying to regain my breath and assess the damage. I felt pain but didn't think anything was broken. I slowly rose and approached the door. I opened it and peeked out. The creature was still laying there, breathing slowly, apparently asleep. Its foot had moved and the door was able to open. I stepped through, pointing my tripod at the creature as though it were some magical sword that would help me if it woke up. I sidestepped through the door, keeping my eyes on the mountain of fur laying in front of me and back toward the front door. I glanced behind me just in time to see a second creature, wide awake, towering over me. It looked down and a low growl escaped it. I made a smelly puddle on the floor. It sniffed and recoiled. I jumped at the chance and dove for the door. It was locked. I grabbed the latch and turned it every way until it opened. Once I was through the door, the creature regained its senses. In 3 strides it was out the door reaching for me. I slid across the hood doing my best Dukes of Hazzard impersonation, landed, and dove inside the car. The camera and tripod jammed the door open. I started the car and threw it in reverse before the door was closed. I turned, causing my door to swing open, impacting the creature and sending it sprawling to the ground. I put it in drive and stomped the gas pedal. The car slid sideways until I eased off the gas. As I sped down the dirt road, I glanced in my rearview mirror. I could see the red of my taillights illuminating two of the creatures chasing me. I tried to go faster, but as soon as I stepped on the gas, a turn in the road slowed me down. I slid through several turns as fast as I could while staying on the road. Trees can kill me just as effectively as those things. The dirt road emptied onto an asphalt road. I drove as fast as possible for an hour before I looked back again. My mirror showed only disappearing yellow lines. I slowed a little to the speed limit and didn't stop until I was home. I sat in my driveway, waiting for the creatures to catch up to me and rip me to pieces. After 20 minutes, that didn't happen. I got out of the car and went inside my house. I made sure the doors and windows were all locked. My clock said it was 6:17 in the morning. I took a shower and changed. I was extremely tired. I laid down in bed and stared at the ceiling, replaying the last 6 hours. My mind tried to tell me I had dreamed the whole thing, but I looked at the blurry photo on the camera and wasn't so sure. After trying and failing to sleep for a few hours, I decided to call the woman whose house I had just abandoned. "Hello?" she said on the third ring. "Hi, this is Tom. I was renting the house this week." "Was?" "Yes, I had a little problem and had to leave." "Oh? Was it anything serious?" "You could say that. I had to leave for health reasons." "I see," she said. "Will you be going back?" "No," I said a bit more forcefully than I intended. She was silent for a long moment. "Did anything strange happen?" The whole ordeal invaded my mind in a vicious flashback. I knew it wouldn't be the last time. I was scarred for life. I would never look at the outdoors the same way again. "No," I lied. "Nothing at all."